All right, so thanks everybody for joining. For our third guest on our extra innings segment, we'd like to welcome 1989 JCHS grad, Mr. Chris Michalak. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Welcome to everybody.
No problem. So Chris, kind of the way we're going to do this, it's kind of an interview type thing. I'll kind of run it and kind of go through some things, talk about you and your awesome career in baseball. If anyone has any other questions along the way, feel free to let us know. There's a chat box on the bottom. We can get those, and we can get those questions to Chris, so you get time to answer everybody. Before we get started, I kind of want to introduce Chris a little bit. Recently, Chris was inducted into the JCA Hall of Champions. So I kind of took his bio out of the program for the JCA Hall of Champions. And before we get going, I'd like to read that real quick. Chris Michalak, class of '89, three-sport star at JCHS in football, basketball, and baseball. Michalak starred at the University of Notre Dame in baseball before embarking on a 16-year professional baseball career, including parts of 4 seasons in the big leagues with the Arizona Diamondbacks, Toronto Blue Jays, Texas Rangers, and Cincinnati Reds. Michalak was a member of the 1987 Joliet Catholic State Championship football squad and a member of a high school pitching rotation featuring 3 future major leaguers, Sean Bergman and Mike Grace, the others. Michalak still holds pitching records at Notre Dame, where he went 34-13 overall with a 3.21 ERA, 12 saves, and 263 strikeouts and 372 2/3 innings pitched over the course of 4 years. He was the first Notre Dame pitcher to win 20 games and save 10 over the course of his college career. Michalak has spent his post-playing career as a minor league pitching coach with the Washington Nationals, where he spent time as a major league bench coach during the 2017 season. He currently serves as the minor league pitching coordinator for the Miami Marlins. So that's quite impressive bio, Chris. It's great to reconnect with you and to talk to you. Before we get going, just a quick story. Right now, Chris, the kids are starting exams next week. I remember when I had exams at JCA during the time when you would be Christmas break or you'd be done at Notre Dame. And you and my brother would keep me up till 2 or 3 in the morning playing Sega Genesis NHL hockey. And I tended to struggle during those exams that week. I was a little bit tired if I made it there even on time. So it was a great story. I always remember.
Wait, so you're blaming me for your academic, I guess, deficiencies is what you're saying?
Yes, a little bit. And the beating I took from my mother.
Well, I don't think that had nothing to do with me. I can tell you that right now, brother.
So, but no, Chris, seriously, growing up, that you were kind of like a big brother to me, along with Jonathan. So thanks again for stopping by.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
So we're going to get started. And the first thing I kind of want to talk a little bit about is pre-high school, before your time at Joliet Catholic High School. And if you just kind of want to talk a little bit about, where you grew up, some of the sports you played, what you were into, and kind of as you got into junior high, during that time in grade school, what did you even know about Joliet Catholic during that time?
You know what? I grew up in, it's Homer Township now, Lamont, Illinois. Went to Ledwick grade school and, played all 3 sports growing up. And, my brothers and sisters were all older than me, 10, 11 years older than me. So, I grew up following those guys around, playing with the big boys, basically, was what it was. And, had fun playing those sports as I was growing up. And, I was very fortunate when I was, when I was in 4th grade. My cousin Mark Grant, who he ended up spending about, I think, 7-8 years in the big leagues. He was a pitcher, and when I was in 4th grade, Mark got drafted in the 1st round, he was taken 10th overall by the San Francisco Giants. And I can remember being at his house the day of the draft and just all the excitement. You know, they were they were talking about the Cubs taking him 3rd overall. You know, he was all excited. And, you know, he like I said, he got taken by the Giants 10th overall. And when I saw him sign that contract, when I saw him get drafted and everything like that, I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to play baseball. And so, you know, at an early age, I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to follow in his footsteps. And, you know, so that was really him. You know, he went to Joliet Catholic. That was my first, I guess, you know, relationship with Joliet Catholic. You know, growing up, my brothers and sisters all went to Lockport. Lockport was going to be the school that I was going to go to. And when it came down to it, you know, my 8th grade year, my brother Brian was actually teaching at I think it was in his 1st or 2nd year at Joliet Catholic. And you know, I would talk to him about what it was like there and stuff like that. And you know, he would fill me in and just about how great of a school it was, academically, athletically. Obviously, the state championships in football and the great teams in baseball, they all, you know, they speak for themselves. So I had my eye on what Joliet Catholic was doing. So, and then especially having my brother there, it was, you know, it was a nice influence. And I started watching just the way he talked about it and just knowing some of the people and watching some of the players that were there. And then I really started getting interested in my 8th grade year. And I told my parents that I would like to go there. And it was a process. You know, at first my dad, who ended up, coaching at Joliet Catholic for, I don't know, however long he coached, 20, whatever, since my senior year. You know, he coached there for a long time. At first, you know, he was a little hesitant for me to go to Joliet Catholic because it wasn't, you know, it was farther away. I was supposed to go to Lockport. People in Lockport were familiar with me, and he just, you know, was hesitant. But then when I think he met some people there, obviously with my brother being there, it made the choice a little bit easier. And it was probably one of the, you know, as far as my career goes, and probably one of the biggest decisions and best decisions I made.
That's great. Especially love that about Mark. That's really cool. That had something burned in your mind for a while as you were going through.
It was awesome, and the best part of it was, you know, I can't even imagine, you know, as highly touted as he was. I mean, like back then, you know, baseball draft wasn't, you know, you waited for a phone call, and that's all we did. We got over to his house the day the draft started, and we were just waiting for a call. I mean, if he was playing in today and he was as touted as he was, I mean, he'd be blasted all over ESPN, all over MLB Network, you know, and the camera would be right in his face, and it'd be, you know, it'd be a circus. And I can just remember the frustration, not so much the frustration, but the anxiety of waiting. The Cubs drafted that year. They drafted Sean Dunston in the 1st round, and you know, Mark's like, "Gosh, am I going to get drafted?" And then when he got drafted, it was just like a big sigh of relief. He was all excited. And I remember, I don't know if it was my brother or who it was, but you know, those big pencils that are like big, like it was probably about 6 foot long. I remember my brother coming out with that pencil going, "Here you go, sign your big contract with this." It was awesome. It was a great time.
Cool. So, you know, Joliet Catholic sometimes gets to be a little bit of a melting pot of, you know, you get your core of St. Ray's or Troy students, and then sometimes you get, you know, from Lockport or Homer, Plainfield, et cetera. And for a lot of those times, it's not easy to leave your friends. I'm assuming, I know you were a good athlete when you were in grade school and in junior high. You know, it's always a tough decision leaving your friends, and you know your friends are going to the public school. My question is did some of the coaches at Lockport, were they aware of you and your talents at that time, and did they hear about you going to Joliet Catholic at all? Or
yeah, they did. I mean, you know, obviously, like I said, my brothers went there. So you know, when my brothers were playing in high school, that, you know, they were 17, 18 years old. I was 7, 8 years old playing in the on the backfields at Lockport and throwing the baseball around. And, you know, they kept an eye on me as I was growing up. And, you know, yeah, they got wind. It was funny. They got wind that I was interested in Joliet Catholic. And, you know, it was funny because back then everybody talked about, and Joe, I think Joe can attest to this. You know, everybody talked about Joliet Catholic recruiting. Oh, those guys, they recruit. They can go get whoever they want. They can do, you know, they can handpick what they want. And the crazy thing was that when I got, when people found out that I was interested in Joliet Catholic, the football coach from Lockport came and visited my house. The baseball coach, the two baseball coaches from Lockport came and visited my house and talked to my dad. And at the time, Joe was at Providence, if I recall at that time. And I mean, and Joe even talked, you know, Joe, you know, wanted me to come to Providence. And, you know, Joliet Catholic, they didn't really, they were like, yeah, we'd love to have you, but it wasn't like anybody came and visited. But then again, too, I mean, my brother was living in the same bedroom as me. So it was kind of, you know, it was kind of like they didn't really have to put forth an effort there. But those were the, you know, those were the guys, they came and visited. And I can remember my dad never, you know, let me in, you know, in on the conversations. My dad and my parents would talk to the coaches that came, and I would just go sit in the other room. And, you know, and like I said, I really wanted to go to Joliet Catholic, and my dad at the time thought I should have gone to Lockport. And I'm not going to say, but after one of the meetings, I don't even think they were out of the driveway. And my dad came into me. He goes, "You want to go to Joliet Catholic?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You're not going there." He goes, "You're going to Joliet Catholic." I said, "Okay, great." And I was happy.
I want to have you talk about your dad a little bit. I know one of the things you said, you played multiple sports. Probably back then it was whatever time of year it was, you played that sport. Mm-hmm. At the time when you were in high school, it was kind of well known, but it's kind of interesting is that you were a quarterback in football and you threw the football right-handed, and in baseball, you were a left-handed pitcher. And I think probably your dad maybe had some kind of influence that, and like you already mentioned your dad and his time mm-hmm. that he gave to Joliet Catholic in the years, and just kind of looking at some of your dad's stuff, like he was sitting in a dugout for a baseball state championship game 6 times. You know how hard it is to win in baseball. Right. Dugout 6 times in 6 high school state championship games, which is just an absolute amazing statistic to me. But I know your dad had a big influence on you growing up, and he's a great guy. If you wouldn't mind just kind of saying a few words on him and his influence in growing up.
Well, no doubt about it. He's the reason why, I'm able to do what I can do now. The career I had was all because of him. And you're gonna get me choked up here anyway. I did that at the Hall induction. Thanks, Jared. No, I mean, he instilled all the work ethic and just the love for the game, whatever the game was. And he taught me how to, hopefully I reflected that. He taught me how to play the game the right way and to honor the game and honor your skill, honor your craft that you've been given. And, that hard work and dedication, things pay off. And, as I was growing up, you talked about the left-handed, right-handed thing. Like I said, my brothers were, 10, 11 years older than me. And so I'd already started playing baseball with those guys in the backyard, and I was throwing left-handed. And I think, my dad kind of realized that, hey, you know what, his arm's he's got a pretty good arm. And, I started playing football, Pop Warner, probably in the, second or third grade. And I think like my first year of playing, I was like, I think they stuck me on the line, or I was like a running back or something like that. And the second year of Pop Warner, I go, Dad, I said, I'm tired of hitting. I'm tired of blocking. I'm tired of carrying the football and getting beat up. I said, you know what? I kind of like that quarterback spot. Those guys don't look like they get hit too much, and it looks like it's a lot of fun. So I said, hey, I want a quarterback. And he goes, okay, great. He goes, if you want a quarterback, you're going to throw right-handed. And I was like, okay. And, he goes, I want you to rest your arm. You're already playing baseball left-handed. He goes, it's two different throwing motions. And if you know anything about my dad, he's big on the throwing motion and the arm action. So, he's like, I want you to save it a little bit. And I right-handed. I shot a basketball. I mean, the couple times I would shoot a basketball, it was right-handed. So if I wasn't passing the ball. And then, so I just picked up the football and and that's what I started doing. I threw it and, I didn't even think twice about it. And, to his credit, it probably saved a lot of wear and tear on my arm and probably two different arm actions. And, it's a pretty cool story. And my dad will always say, well, why do you do that? And he just says, well, because we're Polish, you're Polak. I said, okay.
Oh, that is cool. So eventually you make your way to Joliet Catholic, and you must have had a pretty great impression right away, because I think your sophomore year, you were already, getting varsity playing time as a sophomore. And we talked to Barry Johnson last week and talked about some of the pitching, and like, wow, what a pitching staff, what an array of talent and fantastic arms. But you were a pretty good hitter too. I mean, you're a left-handed hitter and you could swing it, and we're a good position player. So how was that early experience at Joliet Catholic, playing in the baseball program and getting called up?
Oh, it was great. It was, my freshman year, we always took the varsity team always took the spring trip down to Champaign or Springfield. I take that back, Springfield. I think we played like Springfield Griffin and Springfield Sacred Heart. Ski would take that would be like the big trip, And actually, my freshman year, he ended up taking me down there. I had no business going down there, but he just wanted, I was playing on the sophomore team. And I think, Ski had known me since I was, like I said, like 6 years old when my brothers were playing at Harwood Post, Legion, whatever they were called. He was playing for them, or Ken Woody, whatever it was. And Ski was their coach. And, I was running around at 6, 7 years old. So Ski knew me. And I think he just wanted me to get that experience as a freshman to go down on the Southern trip and see what it was. And, I went down there. I think I don't even know if I pitched an inning as a freshman or if I got an at bat. But I got to see, what varsity baseball was all about. And I thought it was awesome. It was a great experience for me. I didn't even care if I played or I wanted to play, but I understood that, hey, I'm just there for the experience. And then my sophomore year, sophomore year, I was playing on the sophomore team. But then when the playoffs came around, right before the tournament, Ski called me. I got a spot on the varsity team for the playoffs. He wanted me to DH because, like you said, I could swing the bat a little bit, and so I made the team. And the crazy thing is and this guy never lets me forget it. The guy's spot that I took on the roster for that tournament that year when I was a sophomore was Sean Bergman. He only pitched like 6, 7 years in the big leagues, but Ski said, you're not making the team as a junior, you're not making the tournament team. So I don't know. I appreciate Ski putting me on that, but I don't know if that was real good judgment on his part to pick Sean Bergman not to be on the tournament team. But I got to play, I got to play in the regional. I got to play, there at we were at Lockport playing Lockport, and it was awesome. It was a great experience for me to be on there. And then I think it just carried over to my junior year, which it was probably my best year at Joliet Catholic. And I think it had a lot to do with the supporting cast around me. Your brother Jonathan and that senior class that they had there. That was a special team. We went downstate. I think we rattled off 33 wins in a row. I think we started off like 5-5 and had a meeting after a game, and we just kind of ripped into everybody like we're way better than this. And then in the next thing you know, we just got on a roll. And like I said, I think it was like, I don't know, maybe 28, 30 wins in a row. And then I think we lost like 3-2 downstate, or 29. Bart Kemp just said 29. Of course, stat rat Bart, oh boy. But yeah, well, that's what Bart did. He's kept score that year. But and don't think, Bart, I didn't see that comment about me. I couldn't shoot a lick. But anyway, that was awesome. You know, that senior class was unbelievable, and that baseball experience right there. And in all honesty, that year put me on the map as far as at Notre Dame and stuff like that, because they saw me downstate play down there, and that's where I started to get noticed.
You know, some good friends of ours, and at least I feel like some guys that were mentors to me as well. But you had some, you know, great coaches. I think about, you know, Jack and Szymanski, who was the head coach at the time, and then your senior year, which Carl took over as the head baseball coach. But I'm sure you had Carl, you know, early on. You know, Dan McCarthy as an assistant baseball coach, you know, at that time, who also was, you know, your basketball coach as well. But what a great group of guys for a young athlete to have as coaches and to mentor you throughout your high school years.
No doubt about it. And you know, those guys were, you know, instrumental. And like I said, my dad instilled, you know, the work ethic in me, and those guys kept me in line. And, you know, you mentioned all those guys. They have great experience and so many years and so much knowledge of coaching just multiple sports, not only baseball, but everything. And the other thing that was, you know, I don't want to say, I guess was probably more kept me in check. They were like family. They were friends of my brother. My brothers, you know, were some of their best friends. So, you know, if you know, if something happened and I screwed up, or, you know, he was going to hear about it, and then my dad was going to hear about it, and it was like I was letting down the whole family. So these guys, you know, they set the bar high. I think they set the bar high for everybody, but they gave you the information. They challenged you. You know, I can, you know, you talk about Mac. I can remember Mac challenging me in basketball. You know, it just whether, you know, I was dogging it on defense, or, you know, whatever it was, you know, he challenged me, whether it was in practice, whatever. And all the guys were like that. Hunk was like that. You know, Hunk and I think it was my junior year, maybe even my senior year. I can't remember, but my, you know, my beautiful light blue 79 Granada that I was driving around in 88 broke down. So I didn't have a car to get to school, and Hunk lived by me, and he'd pick me up every morning in his Mustang that he thought was like the best thing ever. But he would pick me up, and I mean, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I drive in with him every day. And, you know, we were always talking about something: baseball, football, basketball. And, you know, those guys, so like I said, all those guys were family and kept me in check, and they're still family. You know, I still, when I get to see them and I come back and get to see the guys and stuff like that, we don't miss a beat.
Awesome. I do want to talk about basketball, your junior year a little bit, and I think you know where I'm going to go here, but I just think it's just a priceless story, and just one of the I was a fan, but just one of the coolest seasons that I was able to witness and to watch. But I think about that team that you guys had, your basketball team, your junior year, and just it seemed like you had all the perfect pieces. You know, you had the center, you had the forward scorer, you know, you had the defensive specialist, you had a point guard, you had a shooter, you had a good sixth man. And, you know, and I know, and I want to talk about being a three-sport athlete in a little bit, but just so some people know that during that year when you guys got to the playoffs, early on, you played Joliet West, who was the #1 team. So Coach Kemp can say all he wants about your shooting, but if I recall correctly, you made a pretty big shot in that game. And that game, and we'll talk about the other game down the road a little bit, but that game really seemed to get that confidence going for you guys that year.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. That year, and we were playing at Central, Joliet Central, and like you said, West was #1. They had the scores. They were, you know, they played in a better conference. I think we went in there. We were a 500 team. It might have even been, you know, below 500 going into.
I think you guys were a few games below, actually.
I think we were, and so we go there, and we're down by one with like, I don't know, 10 seconds left. I mean, we played probably one of our best games against West. We shut down. Gosh, I can't remember what the kid's his last name was Matthews. He was a scorer from Joliet West, and we held him. We did a good job on defense, and we kept them down. We kept the score low, and we were just in. We were in striking range. We were one point down with, I want to say, like 10 seconds left. We got the ball, called the timeout, and of course we had the ball out of bounds by our basket, and we set up a play. We had two options. It was we were trying to get the ball to Capista in the corner, or we were trying to set up a drive for Jonathan, your brother, to take it to the hole. And if we were able to set the pick and do that, if they collapsed, he was going to kick it out to Capista. Well, we start the play. Your brother drives, if I think correctly. They double team him. They got Capista cornered. He can't get the ball to him. Of course, they're leaving me wide open because, I mean, I had no chance whatsoever. So Jonathan gives the ball to me. I took like 2 or 3 dribbles. I knew the clock was winding down, and from about the corner of the free throw line, a turnaround jumper, and it went down, and it was crazy. It was awesome, and that kind of propelled us. That propelled us into to what came after. But talking about basketball real quick and about stuff, and Bart, I know Bart's listening in, but the game before that, I think, was our last home game against Marist. And we played in the old gym, which was, about the size of my living room right here, which was awesome playing in that gym. I loved it because the fans were right on top of each other. And like I said, that senior class that year was unbelievable. As far, we'd won the state championship, and it just carried over into our basketball. And the guys that didn't play basketball, they were like the best fans ever, that senior class. And every year they had a theme night. They would come in as Hawaiian night, and they would all have Hawaiian shirts on with lays around their neck, or whatever it was. Well, our last game for our seniors that year, we're playing Marist. There's our last home game, and we as the players, I don't know if any of the guys in that senior class know about it, but we as the players were so excited because we were playing Marist and we had a chance against them, but it was also, we're like, what are the guys going to do tonight? We can't wait. We love playing in front of these seniors, and we're out there warming up, and there is nobody in the gymnasium. And I remember looking at Jonathan, your brother, and going, where are these guys? What are these guys doing? It's our last game and they're not showing up. Are you kidding me? And we were mad because they were always there from the beginning of warm-ups, wearing people out, wearing the other team out. Well, it was superhero night that night. And so we were disappointed. Like, no, these guys aren't coming. They're blowing us off. Well, probably about 3 to 4 minutes into warm-ups, all of a sudden, all the seniors and the pep, the guys that were in the pep squad, stuff like that, they all come walking in together into the old gym. And it was awesome. We had the Incredible Hulk. We had Superman. We had, you name it, every superhero was there. But the favorite one, the favorite superhero we had that night was Bill Scheidt, was his name. And he dressed up, and you can do this because we were Catholic University. He dressed up. His hero was Jesus Christ. He had a robe on. He came in with like this cardboard cross, and that was his hero that night. And the place was going nuts. I mean, everybody loved it. Even, I remember Father Bob and Father Bernie and they loved it that these guys were doing this. Well, until Bill Scheidt took the cross and turned it around and started playing the guitar when She Shook Me All Night Long was being played on the stereo. And then late in the game against Marist, he's back there behind the guy shooting free throws for Marist, and he's got the cross and he's waving it back and forth trying to distract the guy. But that game right there, when we won that got us propelled into the playoffs. And that was one of, I don't know what Bart came as. I think Bart dressed up as me because I think I was his favorite superhero that year or something like that.
That's awesome. That is an amazing story. So you beat Central game 2. You move on to the Romeoville sectional. You take down Wabanzi Valley. Then that sets up for a collision course with Lockport basketball. And Lockport basketball, especially around that time, had a lot of publicity around it, known as a great program, prided itself in their basketball program quite a bit. And kind of going back to what you talked about earlier, now you were in a situation, which kind of always one of the cool things about Joliet Catholic and JCA. People ask, who's your rival? Well, it depends who we play that day, because we probably got somebody on our team that would have gone to that high school. So we're rivals kind of with everybody. But specifically for you and my brother being from Lockport, maybe even thought of maybe traitors, not being at Lockport High School and being at Joliet Catholic. Here you guys are on a set up to play Lockport High School in this big sectional championship game. I'm going to talk about the game in a little bit, but how was the build up for that with you and my brother? Did you hear anything, leading up to that game?
That's all we dreamed about. I mean, that was it, to play Lockport in basketball and to have that opportunity. And of course we heard everything, you guys wouldn't even be playing at Lockport. You guys wouldn't have made the team. We're so good. You guys are, you guys got no chance against us. And of course, because we were friends. These are the same guys that were playing, Billy Mondrella, Mike Allen. Those were the same guys we were playing baseball with during the summer in Homer or Lockport on our summer league teams. And of course, and like you said, growing up, you played against them in grade school, or you went to school with them. And like you said, you got a lot of friends that went to Lockport. And so, yeah, there was always that talk. And you said that they called us traitors. That was probably the kindest term that they called us at that time. Yeah, there was a lot of buildup, and and especially for us, we weren't even supposed to be there. We weren't even supposed to be in the same. We were supposed to be long gone. Lose to West in round one, game one, and for us to be there, there was a lot. It was a lot of buildup. It was exciting. It was crazy, and the craziest part was when I remember getting to the arena, to the gymnasium, and pulling up to the out on the marquee. It said, Lockport versus Joliet Catholic, sold out, standing room only. And it was, we got there 7 o'clock game. I think we got there, 4:30, 5 o'clock. We were so excited. We got there, so early. And I'm telling you, there were, at that time, 2 hours before the game, there were 500, 600 people waiting in line to get in. They hadn't even opened up the doors, but people were getting in. They had to add extra chairs. And I'm sure if the fire marshal came, they were breaking some codes that night, because that place was packed.
So in that game, you guys have a lead in the first half. Second half, Lockport starts to make a run. They're coming back. And eventually, the score is tied 45 to 45. Lockport's at the free throw line. There's 1 second left in the game. The Lockport player makes the first shot. It puts it at 45 to 46. He goes to shoot the second shot. Mike Koski, who's your guy's center, rebounds the basketball. And then also, kind of when this is going down, Mike Meyer, your guy's best player, ended up playing a Division I player, went to the other end of the court by the basket. And Lockport's best player, Antoine Harris, he went down and was shadowing Mike Meyer at the other end of the court. So both those guys are hanging out in front of the basket on the other side. Lockport player misses the free throw. Mike grabs the rebound with 1 second left and just turns and chucks the basketball the length of the court. At the first half, I was actually sitting up in the bleachers with your mom and dad and my parents. Second half, there was Mel Deskin, who worked at Romeoville, came and grabbed me and brought me down and put me in a folding chair right under the basket that Antoine was at and Mike was at. So anyways, Mike grabs the rebound, chucks it. Antoine jumps up in front of the basket, grabs the ball out of midair. Lockport celebrates. It's complete bedlam. And then all of a sudden, you look at the Joliet Catholic fans. It was toga night that night. They come pouring out of the stands. Now all the Joliet Catholic people started celebrating. And then you find out the official called goaltend. Goaltend awarded Joliet Catholic the 3-point basket, and you guys win the game. That puts you at actually that game put you guys at 14-14, I believe, at 500. So just what an amazing, I mean, just a great story. I don't know where you were at, and when Mike grabbed that ball and he chucked it, and you were on the court, and just, can you talk about that for?
Yeah, I sure can. You know, first point, crazy thing was with 1:34 left in that game, we were winning by 10 points. 1:34, and there was no shot clock, so it wasn't like after a shot was made, they went on a roll. One thing happened: your brother got hurt, our point guard got hurt. Jonathan got dislocated his shoulder on a breakaway layup, on a hard foul, fell down, broke his shoulder. So we didn't have anybody that could really handle the ball and break the press. So Lockport was able to get back in. So when the guy made the first one, and then he missed the second one, like you said, Koski grabbed the ball. I was down on the lower block with Koski. Koski grabbed the ball, like you said, threw it full court. The crazy thing is that it was right on line. You know, you see so many times guys just grab the ball and throw it one-handed, and it's in the third row to the right. You know, I mean, Mike grabbed the ball, and I mean he threw it, and it was going right at it. Now, I almost wish that he wouldn't have jumped, because I want to know either that thing was going right in, it was going to break the backboard, or it was going to hit the front of the rim and shatter it, because it was a rocket that he threw right at the rim. And then, you know, so I'm watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this has got a chance to go in. And then, like you said, Antoine Harris jumps up, grabs the ball, and comes down. And when he did it, I turned to the ref. That was the trail ref, because like you said, Antoine was all in Meyer's face, talking junk down there because they had the 1-point lead with 1 second. And he was shadowing him and talking to him. And so the other ref had to go down there and kind of like separate him a little bit. And so the trail ref was down there, down by me and Mike. And when he threw the ball, Harris got up there and grabbed it. I turned around to the ref, and I was getting ready to say, I'm like, that's goaltending. And when I turned around, he was already running by me, and he had his hand up in the air like this. And I'm going, oh my God, he's going to call it. And sure enough, I followed him over to the scores table. I looked at Koski. I'm like, he's calling it. He went over, he looked at the scores table. He goes, that's goaltending, 3-point baskets. It's good. And then that's when, like you said, Bedlam went, you know, and then you see Bart Kemp with his toga on and no shirt, which should never happen ever. But he was out there jumping around, you know, the place was going nuts. It was awesome. And like you said, Lockport thought they won. We thought, and we knew we won after that. And the look of confusion was unbelievable. And to credit the faculty, all the people that were there, the administration, the way that they calmed everything down and got people dispersed, and that nothing ever happened, that was a credit to the Joliet Catholic teachers, to the administration at Romeoville, to anybody that was there, because that could have easily turned into like a huge fiasco. But it was, you know, and then, you know, I remember afterwards, Lockport was complaining that, you know, Antoine Harris was at the free throw line when he jumped, you know, and, you know, there was no chance that ball was going in. And the best part about it was that somebody from our yearbook staff had a picture of it, and they didn't tell anybody. And when we got our yearbooks that year, there was a picture from behind the backboard, and there was Harris's hand, and the rim was about right here, and there he was with the ball in it. And that's what led our sports section of the yearbook out. And it was crazy. Guys were going nuts when we saw it. And then also that year, this was probably Bart's idea, but Antoine Harris got, he was voted in our yearbook as most influential to Joliet Catholic success.
Oh, just absolutely priceless.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So another thing I want to talk about, and one of the things that, me looking up to you and to all those guys that were at Joliet Catholic, playing baseball, basketball, football. One of the things I always had admired out of you was just your competitiveness. You were just the way you competed, whether it was you needed to take a charge in basketball or hit a 3-run home run, depending on what it was. But I just always admired that. That was a huge influence on me. One of the things that is lost a little bit nowadays, though, is kind of that 3-sport athlete. How important was it to you when you look back at it to as good of a baseball player as you were, you were still the quarterback on the football team and played basketball. And how important to you from a competitive standpoint was it to be a 3-sport athlete?
I think it allowed me to do, it allowed me to succeed and, past high school, past, into a professional career, because I was competing all the time. And I was competing all the time, but yet I was also giving my body a rest at times. I wasn't throwing year round. I wasn't throwing a baseball 365 days a year like kids are now. Like you said, whatever the season was, that's what I was playing. The only time I played multiple sports at a time was in the summer when we had summer basketball, summer football, and obviously our baseball. But when football season came around, I didn't pick up a baseball. And then when basketball started, I was doing basketball. And so I think it allowed me to compete. I was always competing. I wasn't practicing. I was always competing to win and to be the best that I could at whatever I was doing, whatever that sport was, whatever that skill set was for me. And I think nowadays, unfortunately, I think if kids could do that more, I think especially in baseball, I think our injuries would go down as far as arm injuries, because I always had I never had an arm problem. And it was probably because one, I took care of it. I had, proper throwing mechanics. And then also two, I gave myself a rest from probably, end of August to the beginning of March. I wasn't throwing it. I was doing football and I was doing basketball. And I think if kids could do that, it would be advantageous for them health-wise. I think mentally too, give themselves a break, just put it away. I mean, our guys, Major League Baseball players play 162 games, and it's a grind. And they're grown men doing this, and they're the best athletes in the world. But when the season's over, guess what? They take about 2 to 2.5 months off from doing any baseball activity. They may lift weights, they may do some stuff like that, but they're not starting back up until December, middle of December, and then spring training in February. But we got, I think kids, a lot of times kids these days are doing one sport 365 days a year, and I think it's a little detrimental at times. But as far as the competitiveness, those 3 sports, I wasn't practicing for something. I was always.
You guys hear me or no?
Yeah, I'm going to pause real quick.
Perfect.
That's the first time ever.
So, Chris, you mentioned as a baseball player at Illinois, heading to Notre Dame. What a great time to start out at University of Notre Dame. I want to talk a little bit about how that process was and how you got to Notre Dame, but I got a bunch of things I actually want you to touch on. But from the campus had to be buzzing just because of the football team coming off a national championship in '88. But then too, I'm real curious to hear how your experience was in the baseball program when you first got there, because I mean, I remember growing up watching Notre Dame play baseball games at Lewis, and I don't know how much of a program really there was from a baseball standpoint at the University of Notre Dame. But then you look at your time playing baseball at Notre Dame over the course of those 4 years. In 1990, you guys were 46-12. 91, you were 45-16. 92, you guys were 48-15. 93, you guys were 46-16. This wasn't the same Notre Dame baseball that I used to watch play at Lewis, growing up. I imagine that, getting to know Coach Murphy and knowing him, that was a big part of that. I don't even know if it was a turnaround as much as he just built it up to where it was. So I know I kind of just threw a lot at you there, but I think you kind of know where I'm going.
Yeah. It was funny because I got a letter from Notre Dame, and, I had letters from, a lot of universities from all over, baseball schools. And, I got the first letter from Murph and their staff, and, Notre Dame baseball questionnaire. And, back then there was no recruiting services or anything like that. You got letters. You either got letters sent to your school or you got letters sent to your home. And I got this letter from Notre Dame, and, I showed my parents. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I never filled anything out. I didn't send it back because I was like, Notre Dame, I can't get in there. That'd be great. But there's no chance I can get in there. And, Pat Pezzavento played at Joliet Catholic, and he was a shortstop and also a backup quarterback at Notre Dame. So there was that connection to Joliet Catholic already. And Kevin McShane was on the football team at the time. He was a Notre Dame guy. So I didn't fill it out. So that summer, after our state championship run, our playoff run, I got a call from Coach Murphy, who I think at the time was in maybe his second year at Notre Dame. And he called me and he's like, hey, Chris, did you get our questionnaire? And I was like, yeah, I did. I said, I did, Coach. I said, thanks, man. I said, I'm really honored. I said, I appreciate it. He goes, well, did you fill it out? I go, no. I said, no, I can't. I'm honored, but I can't get into school there. And he's like, well, do you want to play here? I go, yeah. I said, I'd love to come to Notre Dame. And he's like, he asked me, he goes, well, what are your grades at Joliet Catholic? And I went through everything, and he's like, honors society, all that stuff. And he's like, fill out the questionnaire. He goes, you're going to get in. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. And so then I started the process at Notre Dame, and I didn't, like you said, the baseball program wasn't the main focus there. It was the football program, obviously. And like you said, they were playing Lewis and stuff like that. And it was kind of like an afterthought. But Murph had a plan, and he wanted to turn that thing around. And he made a comment to me, and which stuck, and kind of, it was on my visit there. We went and saw a football game my senior year, and he said to me, he goes, you can go to all these other schools. You can go to ASU, you can go to, Florida State, Creighton, wherever you want. He goes, and you'll be a part of something, he goes, and you'll get to play. He goes, because you're good. He goes, there's no doubt. He goes, or you could come here and you could be a part of something that we build. He goes, you could be the foundation of this program turning around right from the very beginning. And that kind of stuck, I could, and that's what ended up happening. We had a great freshman class, recruiting class, and we took off. It was unbelievable. The records that you said, it was impressive what we were able to do. And we were able to go and play ASU and beat ASU, go down to Miami, beat Wichita State, and do all those things. And people started to take notice. And then I think it propelled, Notre Dame into, the late 90s, early 2000s. They got to Omaha, which was awesome.
For some people that are listening, Pat Murphy, that's who Chris and I are talking about. At some point after Chris graduated, Pat went on to have a 10-year head baseball coach at Arizona State and is currently now the bench coach for Notre Dame grad Craig Counsell for the Milwaukee Brewers. So I remember your freshman year driving out there, and I don't know what your guys' home field looked like, but it wasn't what it is now. But you guys played a lot of games at South Bend at the minor league stadium. I think you guys are playing Northwestern, and I went to the game, and there was a booth-wearing brawl.
Yeah. We averaged about 2-3 brawls a year. That was just the attitude. We had we weren't going to let anybody push us around, and we were really aggressive. And Murph has an aggressive personality, and it reflected in us. And when we got challenged, it was we weren't backing down. And there were, like you said, it was of all teams, Northwestern, two great academic universities, and we're out there brawling and throwing haymakers left and right. And it was just, and they were the same way. They had a head coach that was, aggressive and trying to build a program there. So we had a little conflict, and we went after it. And like I said, there was many times that we got into it. And a lot of times it was because we frustrated a lot of people. They weren't expecting us to come after them as hard as they did. And they tried to do something, and we didn't back down.
Yeah. And then, again, the records speak for themselves your first 2 years, but then, your junior year, University of Miami, one of the elite programs in the country every year, still today, obviously. But can you talk? I mean, that had to be just, talk about your junior year a little bit and getting to that point in your college season. And like you said too, you guys just attitude. You guys were tough dudes and brought your lunch pail to practice, and if a fight broke out, that's what happened. And I mean, obviously, like if that game was on ESPN during that series when you guys were down there, I would have loved to have seen that. And I always wanted to talk to you about that experience and how was that in that situation. It had to be amazing.
Oh, it was great. We went down and we played Miami, a 3-game series during the regular season. And I think we took 2 or 3 from them at that point. Or maybe we split, maybe we only ended up playing 2, but I remember we went in and we beat them, and that shocked the world, because for us to beat Miami at Miami, and, of course, the Miami fans were screaming at us about, football, and you guys are no good in baseball and all this stuff. And then we came in and we handed it to them. And I mean, we handed it to them pretty good, to one of their top pitchers. And then we went later that year, the regionals, and the regionals are different than what they are now in the College World Series. Only 48 teams made the college playoffs, and you had 8 regionals across the country. And we had a 6-team regional down there at Miami. And so we had to go down to Miami again and play Miami in a double elimination tournament. And, there was South Carolina was there, Delaware was there were NC State. And so I remember we opened up against Miami, or we opened up against South Carolina. We lost. We got to the losers bracket, and then we had to play Miami. It was an elimination game for us, but not for them. And we beat them, and we smoked them. And then we went to the final. It was a final game. They had 1 loss. We had 1 loss. Winner goes to Omaha. And it was Ron Frazier, who's a legendary coach at Miami. It was his last year. And we kind of knew we were the first time we played him, when we went down there, the umpire showed up for the game, and his license plate said UM ump number 1. So we kind of knew that, things weren't going to be, we weren't going to get any favors done for us. Strike zone wasn't real favorable or anything like that. But we ended up playing them, and we had a doubleheader that day. We beat South Carolina. We beat South Carolina like at a 1:00 game or something like that. And then we had like an hour before we had to play Miami. And I'll never forget, it was 100 degrees there. And we went on the bus, had our little had a sandwich and kudos in between, a pregame meal back then in the 90s. That's what we got in between games. And we were sitting on the bus. And when we walked out, the line to get into the stadium, the old stadium down there, was packed. I mean, there were people down the street because it was Notre Dame, Miami. Winner goes to the World Series. And they were throwing stuff as we're walking in. The fans are throwing stuff at us, spitting on us. I mean, calling us stuff that, make a sailor blush. And we're like, oh my God, this is going to be something. And they, the windscreen, they got the windscreen out in the outfield, the green stuff. They were cutting through it. They were cutting through it and tearing it open so they could watch the game through the fence in the outfield. And so I'll never forget. I mean, I got the start for that game that year, and we ended up losing 5-3. And I think it was probably in about the third or fourth inning. I gave up like a 2-run home run to somebody, and it sounded like a jet was taking off. The fans were going absolutely. I mean, and it was shaking, and I was like, "Holy cow!" This is, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I just gave up a bomb, but I looked around and I go, this is freaking awesome, man. This is, it was just one of those moments like, yeah, this is what I play the game for. These are the things that you work for to be in this situation, whether you win or lose, just to compete in those situations. And it was crazy. We ended up losing. It was heartbreaking. But man, it was just a great experience to be down there and to be in that atmosphere.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it seemed like your senior year, you lost another tough one. And I know I already touched on some of your stats, but, I mean, your 4-year career at Notre Dame, you logged 372 2/3 innings, which is unreal. 34 wins, 3.21 ERA, 34 wins, and 12 saves. So I know we talked to Barry last week when he was at Arizona. He was the closer on Friday. He was the closer on Saturday. And if he had enough left, he was the starter on Sunday. It sounds like you were pulling some double duty from a relief standpoint and a starter standpoint during your time also.
Yeah, well, my freshman year, when I went in there my freshman year, that's what I was. I was a closer. I was closing games as a freshman with the senior that was there. And so that's where I got most of my saves was my freshman year. And then halfway through the crazy thing is, Jared, it's like my freshman year, like closing games, I might have amassed maybe 35 innings. So all those other innings came in 3 years, or 2.5, because halfway through my sophomore year is when Murph moved me from reliever to starter, and I ended up starting. And so, like I said, all those, I think one year I got 130 some innings, and that's that was like in 2 months. 2.5 months of the season. I got that. Guys play all summer and get 135 innings in pro ball. Pitching every 5th day. Like you said, I would start on a Saturday because we played doubleheader Saturday, Sunday. I would start on Saturday, and then I would come back again on Tuesday and start a mid-game week, and then start again on Saturday. And it was, and then sometimes, like you said, sometimes during the week I'd have to come in and and maybe finish the game. And I did that in the playoffs, in the regionals. I did that, quite a bit. I remember that Florida State regional. We were in extra innings against Florida State at Florida State. And I think I pitched like 2 innings of relief in an extra inning game, maybe 2 1/3 or something like that. Gave up a grand slam. We ended up losing to Florida State. And then the next day I came back and I had started and I threw 9 and beat Florida State. I eliminated them. It was, and didn't think anything of it. That's the way it was. That senior year I went, I remember Murph catching a lot of flack for it because we flew out to Arizona State, played Arizona State, and, Notre Dame, we were 0-0. It was the first time we were out of a gym. I mean, guys hadn't seen a fly ball over 20 feet because we were just, we couldn't get outside in South Bend. So we went to Arizona State. We were 0-0, and at that time, Arizona State was, I remember they were like 19-1. We're like, oh, they playing 20 games already. You got to be kidding me. We got 10 feet of snow on the ground back in South Bend, and these guys are. And I started, and first game I was shooting 9 innings, 132 pitches, and beat Arizona State. And I remember at the press conference after, one of the reporters asked Murph, he goes, "How can you do that to the kid?" And Murph looked at me, he goes, "How'd you feel?" I go, "I had 3 more innings in me. I'm fine." And I was like, and of course Murph at the time goes, "He throws 82 miles an hour. It can't hurt that much." So, but no, that's the field at Notre Dame that we played on was at the time Jake Klein was on right there on campus, right next to the football field, and Ingalls Park had more seating than there were more people at Ingalls Park than there were at Notre Dame on campus. The fence, it wasn't even enclosed. The backstop stopped, and then there was a gap between the dugout. Ball. There was a white line in chalk that if the ball went past there, it was out of play. It wasn't even completely fenced in. That's the kind of stadium. That's the kind of field we had, and we'd go and play in these stadiums that would seat 15,000.
Awesome. Well, man, up to this point, you're ready to turn professionally. You get drafted by Oakland. Being in some of those settings had to make you, feel pretty prepared. Not that you were fully prepared to move on and to compete professionally. I think your career professionally is 17 years in professional baseball is just absolutely incredible. You're also in 13 different organizations. And I read somewhere 20 periods of free agency. So there probably some stressful times as well, but still to be at 17 years as a professional baseball player is quite impressive. I read something too early on when you were playing in Modesto. I heard a story that I just kind of want you to tell real quick. I thought it was kind of cool. About the bus breaking down on a road trip in the heat. I think it's a great minor league story, and if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. We, like you said, if you've watched Bull Durham or anything like that, those are the types of buses that we were driving in the early 90s or late 90s, I guess. And we were driving in, like I said, we were in Modesto, California. We were in the middle of nowhere, which is, the whole Cal League. It's desert, and then there's a baseball field, and then a really bad hotel that we would have to stay at usually. So that's all that was there. So we're driving in the middle of the night, heading back to Modesto, and it's 110 degrees, of course, on the bus. The air conditioning never worked, but all of a sudden we're about, oh God, we're like from the baseball field at JCA to the softball field at JCA, away from a gas station. And all of a sudden the bus stops, and we're like, "Are you kidding me?" And I felt so bad. We had a lady bus driver, and she gets out. She goes, "Guys, I ran out of gas." We're like, "Are you kidding me? How can you run out of of course, everybody's like, hey, one job, you do it, hey, but we get heckled all the time. So we think we can go ahead and heckle the bus driver. Hey, you got one job, make sure there's gas in there and stay in the road, stay awake. But so we were literally, like I said, not even 100 yards away. So we got to get out and we got to push the bus. And a slight little incline, of course it's not downhill, slight little incline up to the gas station. So we all get out and we push the bus. And we're like, all right, let's get our gas. Well, the bad thing is that it was a diesel. And I didn't know this. I don't know much about cars, but diesel, when the diesel runs out of gas, you got to bleed the lines or something like that in order for it to run properly after that. So she's like, well, we've got to bleed the lines and then refuel. And that's going to take about an hour. And we're like, what? I mean, it's smoking hot, no air, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And she goes, yeah, it's going to be about an hour, guys. I'm sorry. I look across the street, and there's an Indian reservation casino you saw 30 guys walk across the street to the air-conditioned casino and gamble for 1 hour while she was taking care of the bus. And it was the best road trip ever. And finished, I think I probably won like about $175. And at that time in the minor leagues, that was great. I was happy. I'd like, you could run out of gas anytime you want.
Oh, that's awesome. As you start your career professionally, eventually you get the call with the Diamondbacks, and it's in August, and you're off to Shea Stadium, I believe.
Actually,
go ahead.
Actually, it was Philly, but go ahead.
Okay. So you're off. You're with the Diamondbacks, and well, two parts. When they told you that you were getting brought up to the major league team, talk about that experience. Mm-hmm. And then also I want you to talk about that when you came into pitch and how your first inning in Major League Baseball was.
Sure. We were in Salt Lake City. I was playing for the Tucson AAA, and I was in Salt Lake City, and we were playing, and I think I was like the next day starter in Salt Lake. And so the Diamondbacks were in, they were playing in Philly against the Phillies. And, back then, this was 98. Internet there wasn't anything. There was cell phones were brand new, flip phone stuff, whatever. So it's not like you have the information that you have now. Everything was, it was archaic, I guess, if you want to say. So we got wind after our game was over, somebody goes, hey, Diamondbacks went 16 innings against they went 16 innings against the Phillies, extra innings. They used a ton of pitchers. So right away, as soon as that happens, everybody's like, they're going to need pitching tomorrow, so everybody, the guys that are on the roster are like, they're excited. It could be them, guys start talking. Well, I knew I was the starter the next day. So I was like, well, but I wasn't on the roster. And I'm like, well, maybe this is maybe something. So we went back to the hotel. There was nothing, you kind of linger around the manager's office, see if maybe they want to talk to you or talk to anybody, see if they're going to call somebody in there, find out who's going up because they need pitching. And went back to the hotel. And like I said, again, this was before cell phones. Went and got something to eat. And then got back to my hotel room, and the light was flashing on the phone. And I got a message. It was, hey, call. This is, I think it was my pitching coach. Hey, this is Niff. Give me a call when you get back in. Where are you? Give me a hard time. So I call him, no answer. I call him again, no answer. He's not picking up his hotel phone. Like I said, there's no cell phone. So I'm sitting there going, what's going on? This guy, oh, great. They were going to call me up. I'm not around. I missed my shot. Here we go. So I went out there. And I went out the hotel room, and I looked, and there's my pitching coach and my manager waiting right there. I'm like, and they go, we've been looking for you. I go, I've been right here trying to call you. And they go, hey man, he goes, you're going. He goes, they need you. You got a flight. You're going to Philly. And you're going to the big leagues. And I was like, holy cow, I couldn't believe it. And I called my wife, Shannon, and back at the time we had calling cards. And I used to, back then I would call her, let it ring twice, and then that was her signal to call me back at the hotel because she had the calling card and it was cheaper than using the hotel phone that they wanted to use. So I called her, and she was going to call me back. And but I called her, and I just let it keep ringing, and she picks up the phone, and she goes, I go, hey, how you doing? She goes, I said, good. She goes, hey, let me call you back. And I go, I said, no need to. I said, we can afford it. I said, I'm going to the big leagues. And she, she was all excited, and she was screaming and stuff like that. So that was awesome. And I had a 4:00 flight that morning from Salt Lake. I was like up at 4, got to the airport, flew all day to Philly. Showed up around game time, right before game time, signed my contract. It was awesome. And I walked out into to Veteran Stadium. It was old Veteran Stadium, and sit in the bullpen. I don't get in. I don't get into the game. And I mean, I sat in the bullpen and it was like the starter, of course, that day, he ended up going like 7 innings and I'm down there going, great. You know, I'm not going to get in. They're going to send me out. I'm done, you know, whatever. He didn't get in. After the game, I'm walking down. I walked down to the dugout. Like I said, I just got there probably maybe like an hour before game time. So I hadn't been on the field or anything like that. And I walk in. As I'm walking into the dugout, I look over in the other dugout, in the Phillies dugout, and I see this guy peeking around the corner at me. And he's looking at me and gives me like a thumbs up. And I look, it's Mike Grace, senior from Joliet Catholic, for pitching for the Phillies. He's over there, and I get in there and I got a phone call. In the clubhouse, he calls me from the other clubhouse, and he says to me, he goes, "Man, they'll let anybody in this league nowadays, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, Mike." But it was awesome seeing, you know, what are the odds I get to see another Joliet Catholic guy, a guy I played with, in the opposing dugout. And so then we got on a bus and we went to New York that night. We were going to play the Mets next day, had a day game. And that's when I got in the next day. And, you know, I got an inning. I was warming up in the bullpen, and, you know, the fans at Shea were, you know, just screaming at me, you know, telling me that I suck and all that stuff as I'm warming up. And, you know, the fans in New York they're unbelievable. They're obviously fanatic, but they tell you that you suck and just all over you. The fans in Philly, or, you know, the fans in Boston tell you that you suck, and then they have information of why you suck. They got like stats that go back, you know, 15 years. And then the ones in Philly who love their Phillies, they tell you that you suck. Your kids suck. Your dad sucks. Your mom. They tell your whole family sucks. You know. So that's the difference between you know, the cities that you go to. So I get to go into New York, and, you know, I run out there, and first batter I faced was Hal McRae. I think it was Hal McRae or Brian McRae. It was McRae. And you know, I throw my first pitch. You know, I'm out there throwing, and I'm like, God, you've been waiting for this all your life. And you get out there and Shea, and the backstop looks like it's 800 miles away. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, I'm like, all right, well, you've been doing this your whole life. I said, my goal was get it to the catcher in the air on my first warm-up pitch. And, you know, don't throw a scud missile straight into the ground, get it to the catcher in the air. And I did. And then I kind of relaxed a little bit, and batter stepped in. I threw a pitch, and it was probably about that far outside. And he called it a strike. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I can do this. And then, you know, I struck him out, and then I struck out Todd Hundley, and then I got a pop-up to end the inning. I'm like, this big leagues, this is easy. This is no problem here, you know. And I went running off, and I remember Buck Showalter was there at the top step to give me a high five, and I was all pumped up, you know. And then my cleats hit the top step at Shea, and it's concrete, and I almost slipped and fell right on my butt in front of everybody. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not so cool. Maybe I better slow my roll a little bit. And then I went out there for another inning, and I pitched 2 innings of relief. I think I gave up a run, but you know, I was like, okay, that's how it started. It was great. It was awesome. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty cool when you know, you get your warm-ups in and you're ready to take your first pitch, and you look over and be like, I got Matt Williams playing third base for me today. So that's
it's funny. You know, Matt was playing third, and he came up and he gave me the ball, and he looked at me. He goes, "You ready for this, kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I got it. You know, I'm 27 right now, buddy. But yeah, I got this." I said, I think I'm okay. And the funny thing is you know, Matt became the manager for the Nationals when I was coaching with the Nationals. And the first day of spring training, I was in there because I was AA pitching coach, and Matt was the manager. And I walked into Matt first day, and I looked at him, and I go, "I'm going to ask you the same question you asked me." I go, "You ready for this, kid?" And he looked at me. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, okay, you got me." So it was good.
Oh, very cool. And then, you know, fast forward, and then looking at things, it sounds like right around 2000, you really started throwing the ball, really well, coming into your own a little bit. That kind of carried over to 2001. I know you talked about you had a winter ball experience. You had pitched down there, and then that 2001 season, you end up making the Blue Jays, Toronto Blue Jays rotation. You're with Toronto at that time, and you're a starter. You're in the rotation. Not a reliever. So, just kind of talk about.
I had done that throughout my career. I bounced around from reliever to starter. It was always whatever organization I was with, whatever need they had, that's what I was. Some organizations thought I was better as a reliever. Some thought I was better as a starter. Personally, I thought I was better as a starter. With my repertoire of mainly sinker changeup, it kind of played a little bit better than coming out of the pen and doing that, being a lefty on lefty guy or anything like that. As you know, with the Blue Jays, Mark Connor was my pitching coach with the Diamondbacks. He then became the pitching coach with the Blue Jays, and he asked me if I would, come over there as a free agent, minor league free agent. I said, yeah. I went to big league camp. I had a great big league camp, and just two things happened. I was right place, right time, and I was pitching really well. Mike Soroka got traded from the White Sox for David Wells to the Blue Jays. Wells went to the White Sox. Soroka came over, and Soroka showed up with a bad arm. So he was supposed to be in the rotation. So that opened up an opportunity for me. And then the other thing is that Roy Halladay, it was maybe his second or third year of being in the big leagues. He had a really bad spring training. He used to throw straight over the top. Ball was pinned straight.
I think we kind of lost you. You were talking about Roy Halladay getting sent back down.
Right. So Doc got sent back down. They changed his arm angle from straight over the top to about 3/4. And obviously that worked out pretty well for him. A couple Cy Youngs later, a World Series, he turned out okay after that. So I would always, every time I'd see Doc, I'd give him a hard time and go, I think you owe me a little of that contract you got. And he'd be like, why? I go, well, if it wasn't for me in spring training, having that good year, you'd still be throwing straight over the top and struggling. I said, I pretty much forced you to become a better pitcher. And he'd look at me, he goes, yeah, check's in the mail, buddy.
So that year, I believe you make your first major league start at Yankee Stadium.
Correct.
Pretty amazing.
It was April 7th, Saturday afternoon, Yankee Stadium. It was awesome. It was, day games, everything you dream about. It was, they just won the World Series the year before. I got, all the greats are in the lineup. My boss, Jeter, is in the lineup. Posada, Bernie Williams, Tino Martinez, Paul O'Neill, Chuck Knobloch, Brocious, the list goes on. And then you're playing in Yankee Stadium on a Saturday afternoon, and it was just, pitching against El Duque. And, it was the same thing. It was, it was just I had the same philosophy warming up, get the ball to the plate in the air. And same thing happened. I threw a pitch, the umpire called him a strike, and I'm like, all right, here we go. It's game on. It's everything that I've done and relaxed. And, pitching coach, like I said, he warned me before the game. He goes, this umpire behind the plate, he goes, he's a veteran. He's going to challenge you. He's going to want to see, he's going to test you, see how you react. He goes, don't show him any emotion whatsoever out there on the mound. And he goes, and you'll be okay. He goes, but if you show him up, he goes, you won't get another pitch. And sure enough, I remember watching the tape, and I remember throwing a pitch, and I can't remember if it was to Jeter or to Knobloch or somebody. And I threw a pitch that was like this far, right on the black, or right there. Catcher didn't even move his glove. And he called the ball. And right when he called the ball, he stood up and he looked at me to see my reaction. Like he looked at me like this. And I just waited for the ball to come back. I turned around, and then sure enough, 2 pitches later, I threw it in the same spot, and he's ringing them up. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We're good to go. But probably if he wouldn't have said anything to me before the game, I might have been like, oh man, and then it would have been a different story. But
Yeah.
no, I pitched. I went like I can't remember, 6 1/3, 5 2/3, something like that, and ended up getting the win. That was my first win.
You had mentioned you were a sinker slider guy, maybe not necessarily overpowering, but I do remember your pickoff move was absolutely, filthy. And I don't think a lot of guys were ready for it at the professional level. And then all of a sudden they started calling balks at you.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
about that, please.
Well, yeah, I had, it was a weapon for me. I'd worked on it just like I would work on any other pitch. It was something that I knew it was an advantage being a left-handed pitcher, that it could probably get me out of a jam. I took a lot of pride in working on it, and it did. When it first started out, when I hit the league, I mean, I was, nobody was running. I was picking guys off left and right, and what ended up happening is I in one game I picked off like 3 Red Sox, and their manager got hot. Jimmy Williams was hot, and he complained nonstop to all the umpires that I was balking. So everybody was complaining about it. And then, so they started calling balks on me, and it didn't really affect me. Everybody thought it would affect me. I wasn't pitching as well. Like the first 2 months of the season, I led the American League in ERA, wins, stuff like that. It was me and Pedro going back and forth. And then in June came around, and I just wasn't executing my pitches that well. But they had also started calling balks on me, so everybody thought that it affected me. It didn't affect me. Granted, I was frustrated that I was doing the same thing I'd always been doing. But so the Blue Jays finally sent a compilation of my pickoff moves, the ones that were called for a box and the ones that weren't called for a box. Sent it to the umpires, and the umpires looked at it, and it was funny. I was pitching in a game. I picked over to first. First base umpire called a balk, and after the inning, I saw the home plate umpire and the first base umpire go down and talk, and they talked to each other, and then the first base umpire came and talked to our first base coach, and they go, "Hey, tell Michalak we're sorry. It's not a." He goes, "We watched video. We watched video on his move. He's got a great move. It's borderline, but he's not balking, and we apologize that we've been punishing him." And, and I was like, well, that's great, but the guy at second now, that's really not helping me out much. But so. And then once I found out that, I just balked even more. I knew they weren't going to call it on me, so I took advantage of it.
Well, Chris, I want to start talking about your coaching here in a little bit, but before we move to that, one last thing to share. Can you talk about your first professional at bat in Olympic Stadium?
Yeah.
Not much about a hitter, but I think after this story,
yeah,
I think we'll see how good of a hitter you were.
Yeah, it was June 17th. We were playing the interleague play against the Expos, and probably most of your players don't even know who the Expos are. But it used to be a team in Montreal. So we were playing there, and well, here's the importance. A little baseball 101 fundamentals for everybody. The importance of fundamentals. My first 2 at bats, I came up with runners on base, and I got my sacrifice bunt down twice. I got a bunt down to first and bunt down to third, advanced to runners. So in baseball, that doesn't count as an at bat. So I had so my third time up in the game was actually my first official at bat. And I worked the count to 2-2 against Tony Armas Jr. And for some reason, he threw me a slider down and in, which was right into my bat speed. And I hit the ball into the gap, and I hit a triple. I was the first pitcher in Major League history to triple in his first official at bat. So I'm in the record books. And what happened was the ball was hitting the gap. Center fielder dove for it. And, they had the old AstroTurf in Olympic Stadium, which was like the parking lot, as hard as the parking lot at Joliet Memorial Stadium. And it went all the way to the wall. I rounded second base, and I'm looking at my third base. I checked the outfielder. I could still see their back. I looked at my third base coach. He's waving me. I'm like, all right, great. So I round second, And as I'm running towards third, my cleat hits half dirt and half turf in the old stadium. And I start to stumble. And for like my next 7 steps, I'm trying everything. It looked like I'm swimming in water as I'm trying not to fall flat on my face. And I finally get to third base, safe at third. And I look at my dugout, and the guys are rolling. They're running down the dugout like they're stumbling, make me look like an idiot. But I got the triple, so they can't take that away. And it is what it is. I mean, no big deal. On all the coaching staffs I've been on, I've been with a lot of, Brian Daubach, a lot of, he's a good friend of mine, Matt Lecroy. These guys all played forever in the big leagues, but I always remind them, hey, I don't know what your average was, but my average in the big leagues was 278. I don't know if you can compare to that.
Oh, that's great. So once your professional career came to a close, you started working for the Washington Nationals, and you were 10 plus years as a pitching coach in the Washington Nationals organization. Couple things just from first thing, how was that adjustment going from a player into the coaching ranks? How did that go? Yeah, just if you just want to start there a little bit.
Sure. The transition was kind of easy for me, to be honest with you. Probably the last, 3 or 4 years of my career, 4 or 5 years of my career, a lot of the organizations that signed me were signed me for that reason, to coach. I mean, obviously to pitch, but also a lot of the times I was on teams that had young guys, and they wanted me to help them out and show them the ropes, and kind of be that extra coach there, with also giving me the opportunity to make it back to the big leagues, which, I was fortunate enough to do with the Reds and stuff like that. But, there a lot of times I was brought on to help mentor some of their younger prospects and stuff like that. So when I did get into coaching, the transition wasn't that tough. I'd been doing it for a while. Helping kids out and stuff like that. The biggest thing was, for me, was the emotion, trying to, get guys to, not get guys to do stuff, but, trying to teach them how to go about it. And then when they're out there on the mound, you want it so bad for them. You want them to get it. And then I would get emotional, and, sometimes, and that's not always a good thing when you're coaching. It's great to be passionate about it, but not emotional that you're living and dying with every pitch that the kid throws. And that was probably the toughest thing. That probably took about 2 years, 2 to 3 years for me to kind of figure that out. And that you got to be patient, and it's okay. Like I said, it's okay to be passionate. You just can't be emotional about it.
Yeah, obviously the Nationals just, winning the World Series, that was pretty exciting. And I'm not sure all the Nationals moved from who came up with the organization, who was a free agent, and all that kind of information. But any of those guys, one guy that wasn't with them was Bryce Harper. I don't know if you cross paths with him at all during your coaching career, but any of those guys whether you were cross paths with Harper or any of the guys currently that you
I had Harp his first year in pro ball. I mean, he should have been a freshman in college, I think, or maybe even a senior in high school. He's 17 years old, and I had him in Hagerstown, Maryland, his first year after he signed. And it was crazy. I mean, it was like the Beatles were in town. It was unbelievable. And just to watch him, I mean, such a great guy. I love the kid. I had him for, like I said, since his first year with the Nationals, and, every spring training after that. I had his brother as a pitcher. So I know him, I know his family well, and just to see him mature was awesome. And just, the stuff that he would do stuff on the field. He would do stuff on the field out there, and you go, holy cow, this kid, wow. And then he'd do some other stuff, and you go, what is he doing? And then you go, oh, he's 17 years old. I probably did that in high school myself, or I did that my freshman year in college. Instead, he's doing it in front of everybody, in front of the sports world. So you just forget that's how special he was. Strasburg, worked with Strasburg during his rehab, coming back a couple outings, became friends with him. Scherzer, obviously ran across, Scherzer and I worked together in spring training. a lot of the relievers on that team. But working with those guys, it was awesome seeing them do it. And that year, the thing that was really cool, you mentioned that I got to be on the bench in September that one year. I think it was 2017. And I got to be there when the Nationals clinched the division. That was Dusty Baker was the manager. And I was in DC and I got to celebrate with everybody in the clubhouse with the champagne and stuff like that. And that was really cool. But the thing that was really, really cool is, I was letting those guys celebrate. I stepped back because, I was just there for a month to watch and help out and throw batting practice and all that stuff. And, because the roster's expanded. So I was just kind of off to the side, let them celebrate. It was great. Well, as I'm standing there, the next thing I know, I'm getting showered with beer over my head, champagne, and I turn around. I'm like, who's doing this? And it was about 5 or 6 pitchers that I had in the minor leagues that had, gotten to the big, a Matt Grace, a Sammy Solis, Joe Ross. All these guys they're showering me with, and they look at me and they were like, "Man, we couldn't have done this without you." And that was, that as a coach, I was like, "Holy cow!" It was great. It was great.
Wow. That's amazing. Real cool. I listened to an interview with you recently, and somebody was questioning you about the pitchers that you were coaching, that you were a part of. One of the things you kept on talking about when it comes to the pitchers is making adjustments, whether that be messing with grips or moving to a different side of the rubber or whatever it might be. Can you just take a few minutes to talk a little bit about, how adjustments are so critical to pitchers?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's, adjustments from start to start, adjustments from outing to outing, from inning to inning, from pitch to pitch. That's what the game's all about. The hitters make adjustments. They adjust to, what you're throwing and to what they're trying to do. And as a pitcher, you've got to be ready to make those adjustments on the fly, to realize what those adjustments are. But more importantly, especially in the developmental stages of their minor league career, they got to be willing to make adjustments, because 9 times out of 10, when we're working with a player, a pitcher at a certain level, we're teaching them things that not to succeed at the level that they're at. We want them to succeed in the big leagues. We can let them keep going at A ball, at high A, keep doing the same things you're doing, and it'll probably work at double A. But we don't want you to be a good double A pitcher. We want you to be a big league pitcher. And so you may make this adjustment now, and you might think, why do I need to make it? I'm doing just fine. Well, we kind of have an idea of what's going to work at the big league level. So make this adjustment now. And then so when you don't have to, because making adjustments in the big leagues, that's not the place that you want to make adjustments. And I also tell them, when it comes to making adjustments, a lot of times they go, "Oh, well, this feels different. It feels it's uncomfortable." And I ask them, I said, "Would you rather feel uncomfortable in front of 200 people in Clinton, Iowa, or would you rather feel uncomfortable in front of 35,000 in Yankee Stadium because you're trying to And they're obviously like, "Well, yeah, I get it." So it's like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You better make these adjustments now, or you're gonna struggle, and you're gonna feel real uncomfortable in front of a lot of people.
Yeah, because I know, like, you had talked about you being a sinker slider guy and work down, but now you hear about four-seam fastballs, working up in the zone. It's probably player per player.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's unique, and you coach a little bit differently. But is that a trend that guys?
It's definitely a trend. You talk about guys with ride. The big thing, a four-seam fastball, pitch at the top of the zone, and stuff like that. Well, yeah, there's a lot of swing and miss at the top of the zone, but you can't just pitch it the whole time, because if the hitters don't take it, or if the hitters don't swing at it, guess what? It's ball. Now you're 2-0, 3-0, 1-0, 2-0, you're working behind. There are a lot of holes, especially with the way hitters are swinging nowadays. The top of the zone, you can take advantage of it. But still, the toughest pitch to hit is a well-located fastball down and away. No doubt about it. No, there's a reason why it's been that way forever, and it's always going to be that way. And the guys that can execute that down and away and then execute the top of the zone, those are the guys that are really, really good. And those are the guys that the formula has been the same for ages. It's just now what has happened is that hitters have changed their approach. And unfortunately, hitters, I almost wish I could have pitched against, because hitters don't care about striking out. They don't. 200 strikeouts, that's nothing. Back in the day, here I go. Back in the day, you struck out 100 times, you were embarrassed. Now nobody cares now if you strike out 100 times. You hit 220. You were going back to AAA to figure it out. You hit 220 now with 15, 20 home runs. You're getting a huge contract, and you strike out 150 times. You're getting a huge contract. So unfortunately, what I think is being valued in the game has changed. So therefore, hitters are changing the way that they're approaching it. If the hitters ever go back to laying off this pitch and trying to stay on top of the ball, heads up. They're going to be – then pitchers are going to be – then guess where pitchers are going to have to go back to? Down and away.
Right.
But if hitters ever – but it just goes to prove everything that, I've always said, hitters are stupid. So but they continue to swing at that pitch up in the zone. But they've always swung at that pitch, but it just seems like now they're chasing it a lot more, and they're I think what's changed is the approach of the hitters. Usually with 2 strikes, it used to be spread out, put the ball in play, try to make something happen. Now it's just, well, go ahead and swing for the fences. You might hit it.
Yeah. Chris, how much are games scripted now? How much does the managers really have that gut feeling when to make a change, and how much of it is just kind of already lined up that they kind of already know, what's going on, before it happens?
I think it depends on the organization. I think it depends on the manager. It depends on your personnel. And I think it depends on the situation of the game. There's a lot of variables that go in it. Yeah, you go into a game and you go, okay, if A, B, and C happens, we're going to do this. And in a perfect world, this is what we want from our starter. This is what we want from our reliever. And then this guy close it. Or this is who we're going to use against this guy. You have that, but, the game happens so fast, that thing gets blown up in a heartbeat. And, you have to, again, coaches have to make adjustments to what's going on in the game. So I think in some organizations, it's scripted a lot more than in other organizations.
Yeah, I'm just a casual fan, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, haven't they learned that bringing Kershaw in this situation hasn't worked out real well for them, But again, then I start to think about, well, maybe he's their best option, and that's what was scripted in, and that's just what they're going with the numbers,
And that's the thing about the numbers and analytics and stuff. They tell us what, a lot of times they tell us what happened in the past. They don't tell us what's going to happen. They give us information. And I think the best organizations that get the information from their analytics and then apply it to their personnel are the ones that, that have a good balance between analytics and baseball, and then blend the two together. Those are the ones that you're seeing have the most success and consistent success.
Just kind of as we kind of get toward the end here, and I know when I sent you I initially the flyer kind of wrong. Can you kind of talk about your role now with the Marlins organization and what you think of your boss?
Well, I'm the rehab pitching coordinator now, and what I deal with is guys that got hurt throughout and had surgery, whether it's big leagues, minor leagues, whatever it is. They're going through a throwing progression, and they're going through a rehab process, and I'm dealing with those guys now on a regular basis and making sure that they're following their protocols, following their process, getting them back to being healthy, productive, pitchers again. And so it's probably a more personal basis than when I was coordinator, because coordinator, he froze up on me. Are you good? You can still hear me?
You're good, Chris.
Okay. All right. So, you know, as a coordinator, you're dealing with 100 and some pitchers that you're responsible for, and you're just making sure that they're staying on track and doing stuff like that. As the rehab guy, you know, it's more individual. It's a smaller, you know, it's a day in, day out grind mentally and physically for these guys. And it's just getting them through that process of getting back to the mound and getting them to compete in games. And as far as my boss goes, you know, I mean, he's the best. I mean, no doubt. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, you talk about baseball and you talk about the greats, and you know, Derek is just first class. I mean, he's unbelievable, and everything he does is done with class and character. And you know, funny thing is he took a trip to Notre Dame, and I was there when I was a freshman, when he was a senior in high school, and he came to Notre Dame, and I remember him being on campus, and we talked about that and talked about his visit and stuff like that. And of course, he was going to go to Michigan. I don't know why, but I think he made the right choice by signing out of high school and going to the Yankees. His career turned all out okay.
I would say so. One last question, and just kind of on the rehab stuff, and like, so what about dealing with guys that have just your traditional soreness that you may have, and with guys that are actually hurt, you know? And I don't know if, you know, dealing with some kids that you get the nucleolutions, or, you know, whatever, made their ego may be at a certain level, you know, right, bringing guys down, you know, and saying right, this, that, but how was the deal? How was it to deal with that?
Well, you know, it's like I said, a lot of it's mental. A lot of, you know, some of it is you're being a psychologist to these guys, but most of the guys in the rehab that are in the actual rehab program have had some type of surgery or a major injury that they're coming back from. You know, whether it's a strain or something like that. So as the guys that have to deal with the hurt ego and the high ERAs are usually the pitching coaches at each level. Those are the ones, you know, and those are the ones that I had to deal with when I was a pitching coach with the Nationals. Guys just, you know, and you can tell them right away. You can see who they are right away, that they, you know, they're a little, you know, embarrassed, and that's, you know, you tell them, hey, you're going to fail. This game's about failure, and it's how you accept it, how you deal with it. That's what's going to make you a great player. You know, you got the pitcher that, you know, walks outside before the start, and he gets, you know, wets his finger to see which, and looks at the flag, and the flag's blowing straight out like this, and all of a sudden, you know, he starts giving you one of these, like, I don't know if I can go today. You know, yeah, wind's blowing straight in, he's ready for 9. You know, those guys are easy to see, and those, you know, but they usually get weeded out real quick. But with my guys, it's the guys that are, you know, coming back that are 16. You know, it's a 8-month rehab process of throwing at 25 feet, you know, their first day back, and getting their arm ready to go again.
Chris, what would you say to a group of, if MLB put you in a room with a bunch of just recently drafted pitchers, whether they were coming just out of college or coming just out of high school? You know, we have one of our former players, Drake Fellows, recently drafted by the Padres. But if MLB put you in a room with all these young pitchers and they just asked you to say a few words of advice as these guys start their professional career, just real short, what are some of the things that you would want to bring up to these guys?
One of the first things, two things I would tell them. You have one arm to throw with, protect it. You know, wouldn't try anything too drastic. I'd be very careful with who you trust with your arm. I would say that every throw you make, plan on it that it's your last throw. Because, you know, if you see guys screw around, you know, during batting practice and they're throwing stuff, or they're trying to throw a ball over the light tower or something like that. And I always tell them, you know, if that's your last throw, if you hurt your arm on that throw, would you be able to live with yourself? And I think if you have that philosophy that, hey, every throw is an important throw, and I do everything the way I'm supposed to, if God forbid your season does end and you can't throw the ball again, I think it's real easy for you to put your head down on the pillow at night and go, I did everything I could. You know, I didn't force my arm injury on me by doing something stupid, you know? And then the other thing that I would tell them is, especially the guys that just got drafted, I would tell them, you all got drafted. And the first check that we wrote to you, the first check that you got for being drafted is because of how hard you throw the ball. Every check after this is because of where you throw the ball. And that's, you know, and that's what they've got to realize. You know, most of the guys get drafted because of how hard they throw. But the ones that succeed in baseball are the ones that are able to put the ball where they want to and are able to, you know, change speeds and stuff like that. Maddox, Greg Maddox had a great quote. He came and talked to the Rangers one spring training, some of the minor leagues. He says, what did he say? He goes, I gotta remember this real quick. He goes, I got a lot of, something was like, I got a lot of money in the bank. He goes, I got a lot of money in the bank because I can put my fastball where I want to. He goes, I got a house on the beach because I can change speeds. Any questions? You know, and pretty much sums it up. He commanded his fastball and he changed speeds, and that was his meeting. You know, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Well, that kind of winds us down and brings us to the end. I just, on behalf of myself and the rest of the Hilltopper program, I really appreciate taking 2 hours almost out of your day to talk to us. Honestly, I could have this baseball conversation all night long.
Yeah.
I could go on forever. But thanks again, you know, guys like you and the legacy that had at Joliet Catholic, and we still continue to try to live up to it. And we just appreciate your time and thanks for everything. And that's it.
My pleasure, brother. I appreciate you guys listening to me. It was nice reliving some stuff. If you would have told me Kemp was going to be on this, I probably wouldn't have agreed to it. But it was great seeing all you guys. Hi, Debbie. It's good seeing you. Good to see you. No, I appreciate you guys listening to me, and it was great. It's always good talking to you guys. And by the way, Jared, I'm still waiting for the Joliet Catholic hat you said you were going to send me.
Yes.
I still got the picture of it on my phone. It looks great, but I would have wore it today, but you haven't sent it to me. So
well, what's funny is I sent you the text about here, and then I looked at the I'm like, oh,
yeah,
yeah. On that.
Yeah, coronavirus. It's still in the mail. I got it.
Hey, I know before we were talking about